There are moments in life where everything seems perfect, like a dream you never want to wake up from. I remember that time with Junho like it was just yesterday, yet the pain of it all is so fresh, like a wound that refuses to heal. Sometimes we refuse to heal because the last pain is the last link to what we have lost. I think that's how it is for most of us. When we look back, we see the first cracks in the surface, but back then, all we saw was the shine, the spark, the magic of something that felt right. It started so innocently. I was an artist, living my life freely, painting my own world in colors that only made sense to me. I was independent, strong, and I had the world at my feet. Or so I thought. And then he walked into my life, like a storm on a quiet morning, and I never stood a chance. Junho was everything I thought I needed: charismatic, successful, and oh so charming. He swept me off my feet in a way I thought only happened in fairy tales. Every text, every call felt like a validation of my worth. I was special. At least that's what he made me believe. He knew my coffee order before I even said it, remembered the little things I thought no one cared about. At first it felt like love, the kind you see in movies, the kind where every moment feels like it's meant to be. His devotion was overwhelming. And I didn't realize that it was also a trap, one that slowly started to close around me. He would tell me, "You're perfect just as you are," and I believed him. He made me feel like I was everything he ever wanted, like no one else in the world mattered but me. It felt intoxicating, like I had finally found my place in the world. His world. But looking back, I now realize that wasn't love at all. It was control, wrapped in the softest, most flattering package. But it was subtle at first, and I didn't see it. The little things, the tiny comments, like when he told me my wardrobe choices weren't appropriate for the places we were going, or when he casually asked me not to spend too much time with my friends because they didn't really understand us. "We're different, Ha'un," he would say with a smile, as if he was doing me a favor. As if it was normal to want to be isolated with someone who loved you. "I just want us to be close," he'd say. And I believed it. After all, isn't that what love is? Being with someone who wants you all to themselves? It felt right at the time. He'd criticize my career choices, telling me that my art was just a hobby, that I could do more with my life, with my talents, if I just focused on him and let him take care of everything. He didn't just want to be part of my life. He wanted to be my entire world. And in my naivety, I didn't see how dangerous that was. I didn't see how it slowly chipped away at who I was, at my independence, my passion, and everything that made me. It wasn't even the big things at first. It was the little rules, the tiny compromises. "Maybe you shouldn't wear that. It's a little too revealing," he'd say, and I'd laugh it off, thinking he was just being protective. "Maybe you shouldn't hang out with Sumin so much. She's not as supportive of your art as I am," he'd add, with a smile that was supposed to make me feel like he was just concerned for me. But it wasn't concern, it was control, and I didn't see it. I didn't see that each of those little moments was a piece of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle that would lock me away in a cage of his making. I brushed it off at the time, thinking it was normal. Every relationship has its quirks, right? Maybe I was overthinking it. But now as I stand here, looking back, I realize those little rules were the cracks in the perfect image he painted for us. And I didn't know then that each crack would widen until I was left standing in the ruins of who I once was, wondering how I ended up here. When I think back to those days, I remember the feeling of being cherished, of being the center of someone's universe. I remember the warmth of those texts, the way his hands felt when they touched mine. But what I didn't realize was that the warmth was suffocating, like the heat from a fire that feels comforting at first until it starts burning you from the inside out. And the more I try to remember, the more I understand. He didn't love me. He loved the version of me that wasn't free, the version of me he could mold and shape into whatever he wanted. That's the cruelest part, isn't it? You think you're being loved, you think you're being cared for, when in reality, you're being controlled, and it's not always obvious. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, in pieces, until you're so deep into the web that you don't know how to get out. I didn't know then, but those little rules were the first cracks in the perfect image he painted of us. I want to tell you this story, not because I want sympathy, but because I want you to see the signs. To understand that love doesn't look like control, no matter how many times someone tells you that it does. No matter how many times they make you believe that they're the only one who knows what's best for you. It's not love. It's a prison. And if I could go back, I would tell myself to see the cracks before they swallowed me whole. But now, I am here, telling you my story. I am not who I was back then, and I am not lost. And if you're listening to this, maybe you're not lost either. I was once trapped in the illusion of love, and now I'm free. And so can you be. You know, when I look back now, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when everything started slipping away. It wasn't the big, obvious moments. Those came later. It was the small things. The whispers of doubt, the gentle nudges that led me farther and farther from who I truly was. At the time, I didn't see it. But now, when I close my eyes, I can feel it. The suffocation, the slow erasure of the person I used to be. Junho's love, or whatever he called it, didn't remain constant. It didn't stay warm and reassuring like it had in the beginning. No, it became conditional, and I didn't notice until it was too late. Every time he told me I was perfect, I thought it meant he was being supportive, but in reality, it was just the first step in a much darker journey. He didn't love me. He loved the version of me that could be controlled. At first, it was all so subtle. I would make plans with my friends, and he would ask me in that soft, pleading voice, "Why do you need them?" "I'm all you need, Ha'un." I thought he was just being romantic, wanting to spend more time with me. But when I started saying no to my friends, when I began canceling plans just to stay with him, that's when I started losing my grip on reality. Then came the guilt. Oh, how heavy it was. Every time I told him I wanted to do something without him, he would react as though I was betraying him. "I thought we were building a life together," he would say. "Why do you need them when you have me?" Slowly, those words started seeping into my mind. Maybe he was right. Maybe they didn't understand me the way he did. Maybe he was the only one who truly cared for me. And so I began pulling away. From friends, from family, from everything that reminded me of who I was before him. He didn't even need to force it. He just needed to plant that seed of doubt, and I did the rest. Every small comment he made about my friends, about my life outside of him, started to take root. And soon my world shrank to just him. His opinions, his desires, his needs, they became my everything, and I didn't even know it was happening. But it wasn't just the people I loved that started to fade away. It was the things I loved too. My art. Do you know what it's like to have something you've worked so hard to build slowly lose its meaning? To have something that once defined you become nothing more than a distant memory? Junho was always so dismissive of my art, the very thing that had been my sanctuary, my escape. "You could be so much more haha, Hyun," he'd say. "If you just focused on us, on our future, you wouldn't need to waste time with these paintings." And I believed him. I started leaving my brushes untouched, my canvases blank, because I thought he was right. Maybe my art wasn't as important as I thought it was. Maybe it was just a hobby, something I clung to because I couldn't accept the reality of our life. I couldn't accept that I was already losing myself in him, that I was no longer the woman who painted for the sheer joy of it. Slowly, the walls of his world closed around me, and my passion became a distant echo. The first time it hit me, the first time I truly realized how far I had fallen, was during an argument we had. A fight so small at first, yet so big in its aftermath. I had done something simple, something that should have been trivial. He asked me not to wear a certain dress, one I loved, because he didn't like how it made me look too provocative. I remember standing in front of the mirror, holding the dress in my hands, feeling a sickening mixture of confusion and guilt. It was just a dress, right? But to him, it was a statement he couldn't control. And I wanted to be perfect for him. I changed my clothes that night, and when he smiled and told me I looked so much better in something more modest, I felt a strange kind of relief. I was doing it right. I was doing what I was supposed to. I was making him happy. But the truth was that I was becoming someone else, someone I barely recognized. And the more I did it, the more I believed it was right. The more I gave in, the more I convinced myself that I was doing it out of love. It's okay, I'd tell myself. I'm just compromising. This is what love is. But as the days passed, I found myself questioning my own worth more and more. It wasn't just about the dress anymore. It wasn't just about the friends or the art. It was everything. I wasn't enough. No matter what I did, no matter how much I tried to please him, it never felt like enough. If you really loved me, he would say, you'd do this for me. And I did. I did everything. I gave him everything I had, and still, I felt empty. I started thinking I was broken, that maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't capable of being loved the way I wanted. Maybe I wasn't enough without his approval, without his constant affirmation. And as I spiraled deeper into this thought, I lost myself even further. I lost the woman who once painted with abandon, who once laughed freely with her friends, who once knew exactly who she was. I became a reflection of his desires, a shadow of the woman I used to be. The thing about gaslighting is that it doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't hit you like a slap in the face. It's a slow burn, a constant drip that wears you down until you're questioning everything. Until you're questioning yourself. Maybe he's right, I'd think. Maybe I don't deserve to be the person I was. Maybe I need to be something else to be loved. The thing is, I didn't realize I was losing myself. I didn't see the slow erosion until there was nothing left to lose. I thought I was making sacrifices for love, but in reality, I was sacrificing myself. I wish I could say I woke up one day and saw everything for what it was, suddenly, clearly, but that's not how it works, is it? No, it's never that simple. Instead, it was a series of small moments, each one slipping deeper into my mind, until I couldn't tell where the truth ended and the lies began. Junho's world was becoming mine. Slowly, like a fog creeping over the horizon, his control was becoming my reality. And the hardest part? I started believing the lies. When I look back at those days, I realize now how deep I had fallen into his web of manipulation. By the time I reached the point where I knew something was wrong, it was almost too late. It had already happened. He had already begun to rewrite my life, and I, like an obedient puppet, followed along without question. Every time I tried to reach out to talk to Sumin or anyone from my life before him, it felt like a crime. Why do you need them? He'd ask. I'm all you need. You don't need anyone else. And the worst part? I started to believe him. I stopped calling friends. I stopped doing the things I loved, the things that once made me feel alive. My art, once my escape, became a casualty of his demands. It's just a hobby, he would say. Focus on us. Focus on the future. But it wasn't just my relationships or my career that changed. It was me. I became quieter, smaller, more obedient. Every time I did something for him, something he asked, I thought I was being a good girlfriend. I thought I was doing what was expected of me. But all I was really doing was shrinking, becoming someone else. Someone who didn't fight, someone who didn't question, someone who didn't matter. One evening, I found myself sitting in the dark, the weight of the silence in the room pressing down on me. I hadn't picked up my paintbrush in weeks. His words echoed in my mind, drowning out everything I used to believe. Your art doesn't matter, you don't need it, you need me. And when I picked up the phone to text Sumin, I froze. I couldn't do it. I couldn't face the guilt I would feel, the anger that would come from him. I felt trapped, like my whole life was confined to these four walls, with him standing at the door, watching, controlling, directing my every move. The worst part? I didn't even realize how much of myself I was losing until it was too late. I kept telling myself it was okay, that this was what love was supposed to look like, but what I didn't know, what I couldn't see, was that I wasn't being loved at all. I was being manipulated, and worse, I was starting to like it. The comfort of his control made me feel safe, like it was the only way I could function. It felt wrong, but it was all I knew anymore. But one night, everything changed. I found something I shouldn't have. A hidden phone, messages, calls. My heart dropped as I scrolled through them. And then, I saw it. The truth. The life he had been leading outside of the walls he'd built around me. The life I had no idea about. His words, his actions, all the times he had isolated me. It was all a lie, and I had been blind to it. And what I discovered about him was far darker than I ever could have imagined. A secret life that had been right under my nose while I had been confined to the small, suffocating world he created for me. And that night, I knew things were never going to be the same again. I had never meant to snoop. I hadn't meant to find it, but the moment I saw his phone on the table, I couldn't ignore the impulse. I had never been the type to invade anyone's privacy, especially not his, but after weeks of feeling something in the air, an unspoken distance between us, I couldn't help it. Something didn't sit right, and I had to know what was going on. I had never imagined I'd find what I did. There, in front of me, were messages between Junho and another woman. They were flirtatious at first, nothing too shocking, but then I saw it. The line that stopped my heart dead in its tracks. He was talking about me. About me. The woman he said he loved, the one he had built his world around. But the words he used, the way he spoke about me, shattered me in a way I couldn't have prepared for. "She's so naive, like a cute little puppy," he had written, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate me. "I'll keep her around, satisfy her ego whenever she needs it, but she'll never be enough. She's too fragile, too vulnerable. I'll keep her around just to boost my own ego." That was it, the truth that had been hiding in plain sight. He didn't love me. He wasn't even pretending anymore. I was nothing more than a tool to satisfy his needs, a plaything for his twisted sense of control. I had been nothing to him, just the naive girl he could wrap around his finger. And when he walked through the door, my heart pounded in my chest. I didn't even have to say anything. I didn't need to. The look on my face must have been enough to tell him everything. He froze, his eyes widening for a split second, his composure cracking for just a moment. But then, like a master manipulator, he recovered, standing there, trying to act like nothing was wrong. He reached for the phone. "You had no right to look through my things," he spat, his voice harsh, defensive. "This is an invasion of my privacy." His words hit me like a slap in the face, but it was his actions that crushed me. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even embarrassed. All he cared about was covering his tracks, making sure I didn't find out the truth. I felt a burning rage that I'd never felt before. "Why did you do this?" I screamed, my voice breaking. "Why did you lie to me? Why did you keep me trapped in this cage thinking I was the only one?" And for the first time, I let the anger spill out. I couldn't keep it in anymore. The years of silence, of swallowing my fears and doubts, were gone. I lashed out at him. My hands shook as I grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, demanding answers. I wanted to hurt him, to make him feel the same pain he had caused me. "Why did you do this to me? I loved you, and you used me like I was nothing." He flinched, but it wasn't out of regret. It was out of anger. He pushed me away, and with a harsh slap across my cheek, his words cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. "You'll never be enough for me," he sneered. "You're too weak, too needy. This is your fault. You made me do this. If you had been different, if you had changed, I wouldn't have had to look for what you couldn't give me." The slap wasn't just physical. It was a wake-up call. It wasn't just about this girl, this other woman. It was about me. It was about the fact that I had never been good enough for him. He had told me time and time again that he loved me, that I was everything to him. But it was all lies. I was never what he wanted. I was never enough. And I had become so dependent on him, so afraid of being alone, that I didn't even know how to survive without him. I had forgotten who I was, forgotten how to live without his validation, without his presence. The person I used to be, strong, independent, was gone. All I had left was a shell, a broken version of myself who couldn't even call her friends back, couldn't find the courage to ask for help. I had pushed them all away, thinking that I was being loyal to him, thinking that I was doing the right thing. But now here I was, reduced to tears, alone, in the apartment that had once felt like home. I didn't have the strength to leave. I didn't have the courage to pick up the phone and call anyone. The fear of rejection, the fear of being alone, kept me frozen in place. I was scared. Scared of the world outside, scared of being abandoned, scared of having no one left to turn to. I had lost touch with everyone, even with myself. I cried that night not just for the man who had betrayed me, but for the person I had become. I had let myself disappear for him. I had allowed him to strip me of my identity, my independence, until there was nothing left but fear. I felt like I was drowning in that fear, suffocating in the silence he had created, and I couldn't find a way out. I didn't know how to get back to myself. I didn't know how to rebuild. I didn't know if I even could anymore. And in that moment, I realized I had lost the most important thing of all, the ability to stand on my own. I didn't just lose him. I lost myself. I had spent so many months in a fog, just moving through the days, letting Junho dictate everything. The silence in my life had become suffocating, the isolation unbearable. I couldn't remember the last time I felt alive, truly alive. I had been too afraid to step out, too afraid to challenge him, to question my place in this world that he had built around me. It was easier to stay quiet, easier to believe his lies that I was nothing without him. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice had started to stir. It had been a whisper at first, faint and hesitant, but as time passed, it grew louder, more insistent. One afternoon, I decided to break the silence. I hadn't spoken to Sumin in so long, and I needed to know how she was. I missed her. I missed the woman I used to be, the one who had friends, who laughed without fear of upsetting anyone, who wasn't afraid to be herself. So I reached out to her. I messaged her, told her I was sorry, and asked how she was doing. It was awkward at first, the distance between us was undeniable, but Sumin's response was different than I expected. She welcomed me back with warmth, no hesitation, no anger. Her reply wasn't just forgiving, it was joyful. "Hey, I've tried so many times to reach you to tell you the good news. I've been trying to get in touch for months now. A gallery wants to feature your art. They've seen your work and want a solo exhibit. I didn't know how else to reach you." At first, I felt a rush of happiness. A gallery! That was what I had dreamed of. This was everything I had worked for, everything I had put my heart into. I felt alive again, like I was finally seen. But then, the joy quickly faded as I scrolled through my messages looking for any trace of her attempts to reach me. But there was nothing. No messages, no missed calls, nothing from her at all. I stared at my phone, feeling a coldness spread through me. I had no memory of ever getting any of her texts, none of her messages about the gallery, the opportunity that could have changed everything for me. How was it possible? How could I not have seen them? Then it hit me. Junho. He had deleted the messages. Every single one. Every attempt she made to reach me, every piece of hope she tried to give me had been erased. Because he didn't want me to see it. He didn't want me to have something that could potentially give me back my confidence, my freedom. If I had seen those messages, I might have remembered who I was. I might have started to believe in myself again. And that realization, the truth of it, was the final nail. It wasn't just that he had kept me isolated. It wasn't just that he had tried to control who I talked to or what I did. It was that he had intentionally kept me from something that could have set me free. The realization that he had done this, that he had erased a chance for me to succeed, to stand on my own 2 feet, it shattered me. But at the same time, it lit a fire in me that I couldn't ignore. This wasn't just about me being trapped. This wasn't just about him controlling my every move, my every thought. It was about my life, my future, my worth, and I had been letting him take that away from me. He had tried to make me believe I was nothing, that I was just a naive little girl who needed him. But I wasn't that girl. I wasn't weak. I wasn't nothing. I was something. I had always been something. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized that I had been living in a prison of my own making, staying there out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of failing, fear of losing him. But what I hadn't seen was that I had already lost myself. I had already given up everything that mattered. But now I was done. I took a deep breath and grabbed the sketch pad from the table. I had to remind myself of who I was. I had to remind myself of the woman I once was, the woman who created, who dreamed, who lived. I grabbed my charcoal, and for the first time in months, I started to sketch again. The drawing didn't come easily at first. My hand was shaky, uncertain, but as I drew, I felt a small sense of power returning. I wasn't just a passive participant in my own life. I wasn't someone who existed only for him. I was Ha-eun. Junho came home later that night. I could see it in his eyes, the flicker of recognition, the way he saw the sketch. He wasn't angry this time. No, this time I saw something else. Something darker. Fear. His fear. "You're mine, Ha-eun," he said, his voice cold. "You will always be mine. Don't think you can change. Don't think you can leave." I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. "I'm not yours," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "Not anymore." And that's when I realized the truth of it. Junho wasn't afraid of me leaving him. He was afraid of me finding myself again. He was afraid of me realizing I didn't need him. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid to stand up. I wasn't afraid to be myself. And that night, I promised myself that I would no longer let him control me. No more lies, no more erasing my worth. I had a chance, I had an opportunity, and for the first time I wasn't going to let him take it from me. The storm was coming and I was ready for it. The day was supposed to be mine. The day Junho had carefully planned. The day he had expected me to walk down the aisle and be his. But instead, it became the day I set myself free. I had known this moment was coming for months, had felt it building inside me, like a pressure I could no longer hold back. Junho had manipulated me for so long, had used me, controlled me, twisted me into someone I didn't recognize, and now I was finally ready to expose him, to show the world who he really was. That morning, I was supposed to be in a bridal gown, standing in front of an altar. Instead, I stood in front of an art gallery, my heart pounding, my hands steady for the first time in years. I had spent months preparing for this moment, and I wasn't going to let him steal it from me. The gallery opening was everything I had dreamed of. The place where I would show the world who I truly was, the artist I had locked away for far too long. I had called it Unbound, and the title said everything about me, about how I had been caged, suffocated, and broken. But now, I was free. The centerpiece of the exhibit was a sculpture I had poured every ounce of pain into, everything you feared. It was a shattered glass figure of a woman, arms outstretched, breaking free from the shards that once held her down. Each fragment of the glass reflected a piece of me that had been trapped by his lies, his control. I had created it in secret, working in the quiet hours of the night, my hands bleeding from the sharp edges of the glass. It was my declaration, my rebellion. I had never intended to go through with the wedding. I knew that the moment I started sketching again, when I started reclaiming parts of myself, that I could never walk down that aisle. Not as his puppet. Not as someone he owned. I wasn't going to be a prize for him to claim. But I couldn't just leave without a fight. I needed the world to see him for who he really was. I needed to make him feel what I had felt all these years. Trapped, suffocated, invisible. As the doors to the gallery opened, the first guests began to arrive. The energy in the room was electric, the excitement palpable. They had no idea what was coming. The whispers of my past as a quiet, obedient woman hiding in the shadows of Junho's world, those were about to end. And then he arrived. I had known he would come. He couldn't resist. He had always been the center of attention, the one who controlled everything. But when Junho saw the crowd gathered in front of my artwork, his face twisted with confusion. When he saw the sculpture, the glass fragments, the raw emotion it captured, he knew, deep down, what was coming. He didn't even try to hide his anger. What is this?" he barked, his voice rising, trying to intimidate me, trying to take control. "You think this is funny? You think you can embarrass me like this?" I could feel his rage seeping into the room, like a dark cloud threatening to choke out the light. But this time, I didn't flinch. This time, I was no longer afraid of him. I wasn't his. Not anymore. "Why are you here, Junho?" I asked, my voice steady, no trace of fear. "Why are you trying to control me?" His eyes flickered with rage, but this time it wasn't enough to silence me. "You think I care about your little art show? You think anyone will believe your lies?" His voice was low, menacing, his every word designed to cut me down, to make me doubt myself. "You're nothing without me. You'll always be nothing." I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and pressed play. The gallery fell silent as Junho's voice filled the room. The recordings were clear, his words unmistakable. "She's so naive. A cute little puppy who thinks she's the center of my world. I'll keep her around to satisfy her ego, to make her feel like she's needed, but she'll never be enough. She's just a toy, a game. And when I'm done with her, I'll toss her aside just like I always do." The crowd gasped. I could see it in their eyes, the shock, the disbelief. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. They couldn't believe he was capable of such cruelty. And in that moment, as I watched his face go pale, as the truth of his words hit him harder than anything I could have ever done, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: liberation. I wasn't his puppet anymore. I wasn't the fragile, naive girl he had painted me as. I was Haun, the woman who would not be controlled. The look in his eyes was one of desperation. He stepped forward, his voice trembling with rage. "You have no idea what you're doing, Haun. You're nothing without me. I made you. You'll regret this." But I was done listening to him. I didn't need him anymore. With every ounce of strength I had left, I stood tall, looked him in the eye, and spoke the words that would change everything. "I know," I said, my voice firm, steady. "That's why I left." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, the world stood still. The guests, the people who had come to see my art, stood in shock, their eyes shifting between Junho and me. I didn't wait for him to respond. I didn't need to. I had finally said what I needed to say. I had exposed him for the coward he was. The manipulation, the control, it had all been laid bare. And now I was free. As Junho turned and stormed out of the gallery, unable to control the situation anymore, I felt the weight lift from my chest. I wasn't the same woman who had entered this world. I wasn't the woman who had been afraid to stand up, afraid of being alone. This was my moment, the moment I would never go back from, the moment I stepped into the light. The gallery erupted into applause, but I didn't hear it. I didn't need to hear it. I was no longer defined by Junho's lies, no longer defined by the fear that had once held me captive. I was Haeun, and I was free. In the weeks that followed the gallery opening, everything changed. The silence I had once lived in, the silence of fear, of isolation, of the life Junho had forced me into, was now filled with something new. Noise, voices, messages, people reaching out. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then my phone buzzed constantly. It was like an avalanche, a flood of messages, emails, and notifications I couldn't escape. The exhibit, my art, had gone viral. It wasn't just my gallery showing anymore. It was a movement, a wave of recognition that swept across social media and beyond. My works, my sculptures, the raw emotion in each piece resonated with people. They saw themselves in my struggle, my suffocation, and in the moment of freedom I had captured in glass and paint. It wasn't just an art show. It was a voice for the silent, a statement for the oppressed, and an expression of defiance. People who had been trapped, just like I had been, saw something in my art that reminded them of their own battles. And then came the messages, one after another. Survivors of abusive relationships, both emotional and physical, reached out to me, sharing their stories of struggle, pain, and eventual liberation. They spoke of manipulation, isolation, and control, the same horrors I had lived through. But what I hadn't expected What touched me in a way nothing else ever had was their gratitude. Thank you for showing us that we are not alone. Thank you for showing us that it is possible to break free. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. I wasn't just an artist. I was a voice for those who had been silenced, for those who had been controlled, for those who had been broken. And in this flood of messages, I found a kind of healing I never expected. Each letter, each story of survival became a thread in the tapestry of my own healing. They were not just supporting me, they were lifting me up, helping me rebuild. But even in the midst of all this, there was one thing I hadn't expected. Junho. He couldn't let it go. He couldn't stand seeing me free, seeing me move forward without him, without his control. It didn't take long for his attempts to reach me to begin. Meal mails, messages, legal threats. At first I read them. His words were full of desperation, full of guilt and promises. Haun, I need you back. You're the only one who truly understands me. Please don't do this. He begged. He threatened. He tried everything. One email I remember stood out. It was longer than the others, more personal. He wrote about how he had changed, how he had been wrong, how I was the love of his life. He claimed he could make everything right if I just gave him a chance to prove it. He even sent legal threats, trying to intimidate me, hoping I'd back down and return to him. But with each message, I felt my resolve growing stronger. His words didn't have the power over me they once did. They were hollow, his promises empty. I had seen through him now. I had seen him for what he truly was, a man afraid of losing control. A man too afraid to let me be free, to let me be myself. And so I did the only thing that made sense. I deleted them. Every one of them. Unread. Every email, every text, every word he sent my way. Gone. I didn't need to read them. I didn't need to hear his apologies or his threats. He no longer had a place in my life. It wasn't easy, though. There were moments when I was tempted to look, to wonder if maybe he was really sorry, if maybe we could have a chance at fixing things. But deep down, I knew the truth. I knew what he had done to me. I knew how he had broken me. And I also knew that I was better than that. I was stronger than that. I was more than the woman he had tried to mold into his version of perfection. I had fought for my freedom. I had fought to find myself again, and there was no going back. The more I deleted, the more I felt the weight lift off me. The more I let go of him, the more I began to feel the power of my own voice, the strength of my own spirit. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. And as the days passed, I felt something else too. Peace. The peace of knowing that I had done what was right. The peace of knowing that I had walked away, not out of fear, but out of strength. The peace of knowing that I was no longer tied to a man who tried to break me, a man who made me believe I was nothing. In time, the anger faded, and what was left was the clarity of my own truth. I was no longer the woman who had been silenced. I was no longer the woman who had let fear control her every move. I had broken free. And nothing, not even Junho, could take that away from me. As I moved forward, I realized that the world was full of possibilities. Possibilities I had once been too afraid to even imagine. I could be who I wanted to be. I could paint without fear. I could laugh without looking over my shoulder. I could live. Junho's world crumbled just as mine had once. He would try to rebuild it, try to regain control. But I wasn't there anymore. I had left that world behind, and as I looked to the future, I realized that the possibilities before me were limitless. If you had told me a year ago that I would be standing here today, this strong, this free, I would have laughed. I would have told you that you were crazy, that I wasn't capable of surviving without Junho, that I was too broken to ever piece myself back together. But here I am. I made it through the storm, and now I'm standing in the light of my own choosing. It hasn't been easy, and it didn't happen overnight. There were days when I thought I would never stop crying, when I felt like I would never truly be free. But with each passing day, I became stronger. I took control of my life, my art, my emotions, my relationships. I stopped being the woman who waited for someone else to validate her, to tell her she was enough. I started validating myself. The first thing I did was pick up my paintbrush again. I hadn't touched it in so long, but when I did, it felt like coming home. My hands shook as I dipped the brush into the paint, but the act of creating something again, something purely mine, filled me with a sense of purpose. It was like I had been starving, and art was the food that nourished me back to life. I started to thrive. I got my first solo exhibition after my gallery show, and this time, it wasn't because Junho had helped me or made it happen. It was because I had worked for it. I built my name, my reputation on my own terms. No one could take that from me, and for the first time in years, I felt proud of who I was and what I had accomplished. My art was no longer just a form of escape, it was a declaration. Each piece I created was a message to myself, a reminder of what I had overcome. I painted my pain, my liberation, my growth. I painted the woman I had once been and the woman I had become, and with each stroke I felt the pieces of me falling back into place, like a shattered mirror slowly piecing itself together again. But it wasn't just my art that had changed. It was me. The woman I had been when I was with Junho was a shadow of this new woman. She was afraid, trapped, unsure of herself. But now I was confident. I was independent. I was the master of my own destiny, and for the first time, I felt like I was living my life, not someone else's. As the days went by, I started looking for ways to celebrate my newfound freedom. One afternoon, I walked past a tattoo parlor. The sign outside read Freedom Inc. I hadn't planned it, but something inside me urged me to walk in. When I entered, the artist smiled, asking what I had in mind. I didn't know exactly, but I felt the need for something permanent, something symbolic of the transformation I had gone through. After some thinking, I chose the design, a bird flying free, soaring into the sky, its wings spread wide. It was a symbol of everything I had fought for, my independence, my strength, my rebirth. The bird was me. I had been trapped in a cage, but now I was flying free, no longer bound by anyone's expectations, no longer controlled by anyone's fear. As the needle pierced my skin, I felt something release inside me. The pain of the tattoo wasn't nearly as sharp as the pain I had endured before. This pain was different. It was the pain of growth, the pain of moving forward. The bird on my wrist was more than just ink. It was a reminder of everything I had overcome, everything I had become. It was my declaration to the world and to myself that I was free. Sitting there, watching the tattoo take shape, I reflected on everything I had learned. The pain had taught me resilience. The betrayal had taught me to trust myself. The isolation had taught me how to stand alone. I had learned the hard way that no one else could define me, no one else could control me. I had to define myself. I had to take control of my own life, my own story. And the freedom I felt now, the peace, was worth every tear, every sleepless night. It was hard to accept at first, but I understand now. I understand that pain is a part of life, but it doesn't define you. It doesn't have to hold you back. You can heal from it. You can grow from it. And most importantly, you can reclaim your own power. As I left the tattoo parlor that day, I felt different. I felt lighter. I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in so long, I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't afraid to live. I still carry that bird on my wrist, a permanent reminder of everything I've overcome and everything I've become. Every time I look at it, I'm reminded of the woman I was and the woman I am now. I am not the naive girl who once let fear control her. I am not the woman who allowed herself to be suffocated. I am strong, I am free, and I am me. And if you're still listening to this and you feel like you're trapped in your own life, like you've lost yourself, please take this as a reminder. You can break free. You can find yourself again. You are not defined by what has happened to you. You are defined by what you choose to become. It won't be easy. but nothing worth having ever is, and in the end, the freedom, the peace, and the strength you'll gain will be worth it. You are worth it. Don't ever forget that. The bird is waiting for you to spread your wings. Hit the subscribe button if you like the story, and stay tuned with us for more.